Victoria is currently sobbing into a cardboard box, holding a stapler she stole from the supply closet, while security waits to escort her out. 24 hours ago, she told me my ring looked like a prize from a bubblegum machine. She doesn't realize that cheap piece of glass is the only reason her father's company didn't go bankrupt 10 years ago. She thinks she's having a bad day. She has no idea I'm about to buy the building she's being evicted from. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I checked my reflection in the lobby glass of the Pinnacle Group building, not to admire myself, but to ensure I looked sufficiently invisible. The reflection stared back, a woman in a gray cardigan that had started pilling at the elbows 3 months ago, wearing black slacks that were a half-inch too short, and shoes that I had bought at a discount warehouse for $19. Perfect. I reached into my pocket and fingered the loose change there. 3 quarters, 2 dimes, and a nickel. I knew the exact amount because I had counted it out on my kitchen counter this morning. I always counted it. People who lived paycheck to paycheck knew exactly how much metal was in their pockets. They knew the weight of it. I walked past the security desk. "Morning, Frank," I said. Frank didn't look up from his phone. Good. Being ignored was the goal. Being ignored meant I was safe. I made my way to the break room on the 4th floor. It was 7:45 in the morning. The office was mostly empty, save for the hum of the HVAC system and the distant sound of the cleaning crew finishing up on the upper levels. This was my sanctuary, the quiet before the performance began. I approached the vending machine. The coffee here cost 75 cents. It tasted like burnt water and powdered chemicals, but I bought it every single morning. I could have brought a thermos of high-end single-origin roast from my apartment, the one with the granite countertops and the view of the skyline that nobody here knew about. But that would be a mistake. Rich people brought coffee from home because they preferred the taste. Poor people bought coffee from the machine because they were running late, or their pot broke, or they just needed the caffeine hit to survive the morning. I needed to be the latter. I fed the quarters into the slot one by one. Clink, clink, clink. I watched the brown sludge fill the paper cup. My mind started drifting to the bank notification I had swiped away on my phone earlier. The quarterly dividends from the trust had hit. The number was so large it looked like a mistake, a string of zeros that could buy this entire floor of the building. I picked up the hot cup. It burned my fingertips. "Focus, Ashley," I told myself. "You are an analyst making $42,000 a year. You are worried about rent. You are worried about the electric bill." I took a sip and grimaced. The taste helped. It grounded me. It reminded me that for the next 9 hours, I wasn't Ashley Collins, heiress to the Collins venture capital empire. I was just Ashley, the quiet girl in the cubicle near the bathroom who wore clothes from 5 seasons ago. I walked to my desk, the carpet muffling my cheap shoes. I sat down and placed the coffee on a coaster I had stolen from a bar 3 years ago. I turned on my computer. The screen glowed to life, demanding a password. I typed it in. Promise kept, Gia. That was the only real thing about me here. The promise. "You're early." I jumped, sloshing a little bit of the coffee onto my thumb. I didn't wipe it off immediately. I let it sting. Gregory Ashford was standing in the doorway of his office, holding a stack of files. The vice president of Pinnacle Group looked tired. His tie was already loosened, and it wasn't even 8 o'clock. "Just getting a head start on the quarterly projections, Mr. Ashford," I said, keeping my voice low, deferential. He grunted. "Make sure the font sizes are consistent this time. Victoria said the last batch gave her a migraine." My jaw tightened. I had to force my teeth apart. Victoria hadn't even opened the last batch. I knew because the read receipt timestamps I had secretly embedded in the document properties showed 0 activity from her account. She had just guessed that I did it wrong, and Gregory believed her because she was his daughter. "I'll double-check them," I lied. "I'm sorry about that." "Right. Meeting in 10 minutes. Don't be late." He turned and walked back into his office, slamming the door. I grabbed a tissue and wiped the coffee off my thumb. My skin was red. I looked down at my hand. The ring was turned inward, the stone pressing against my palm, hidden from view. I spun it around. The pink diamond caught the fluorescent overhead light. It was an Art Deco piece from the 1920s, platinum setting, with a central stone that was so rare it had its own insurance policy, distinct from the rest of the estate. For a second, just a second, I let it sparkle. I let myself remember the day my father gave it to me, the smell of his study, the way his hands shook. Then I heard the elevator ding. Victoria. I spun the ring back around, hiding the diamond inside my fist. I hunched my shoulders, making myself smaller, and opened a spreadsheet. It was showtime. Giantis. The conference room smelled like expensive perfume and stale donuts. There were 12 of us around the mahogany table. Gregory sat at the head, looking at his phone. Victoria sat to his right, radiating a kind of aggressive perfection that made my teeth ache. She was wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my car. Her hair was blown out to a mirror shine. I took the seat closest to the door. This was strategic. If I needed to escape, I could. "All right, let's get this over with," Gregory said, tossing his phone onto the table. "Winthrop Industries. We need to land this account. If we don't, we're looking at layoffs by Q3. The room stiffened. Layoffs. The word hung in the air like smoke. "I have the pitch deck ready," Victoria said, smiling. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. It was a predator's baring of teeth. "It focuses on our agility and our—" She paused, her eyes scanning the room. Her gaze landed on me. I froze. I was taking notes, my head down. Had I done something? Was my cardigan unbuttoned? "Ashley, sweetie," she said. Her voice dropped an octave into that faux concerned register that set off every alarm bell in my body. "Stop writing for a second." I stopped. I looked up. "Yes?" "Your hand," she said, pointing a manicured finger across the table. I looked at my hand. In my haste to take notes, I had forgotten to turn the ring inward. The diamond was facing up. It wasn't catching the light particularly well in the dim room, but it was visible. "What is that?" she asked. It's just a ring," I stammered. My heart started hammering against my ribs. "Panic. Do not panic. It's just a ring. Lie. You are good at lying." "Can I see it?" She didn't wait for an answer. She reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was tight, her nails digging into my skin. She pulled my hand toward the center of the table, displaying it like a specimen in a jar. "Oh my God," she laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound, like breaking glass. "Dad, look at this." Gregory glanced up. "We're in a meeting, Victoria." "No, you have to see this. It's adorable." She looked at me, her eyes wide with mock sympathy. "Did you get this out of one of those gumball machines? You know, the ones at the grocery store entrance?" The air left the room. Several analysts looked down at their laptops. Nicole, sitting 2 seats away, looked horrified. "It's vintage," I whispered. My throat felt like it was closing up. "Vintage?" Victoria repeated the word like it was a slur. "Honey, vintage means old and valuable. This is—" She squinted at the diamond. "Is this supposed to be pink glass, or is it plastic? It's a family heirloom—" "It looks like something a 5-year-old would wear to a tea party," she interrupted, dropping my hand. It hit the table with a dull thud. "I mean, seriously, Ashley, we have clients coming in here. You represent the brand, walking around wearing costume jewelry from a preteen dress-up kit? It's embarrassing." My face burned. I could feel the heat rising up my neck, flooding my cheeks. "It's worth $3 million. I screamed inside my head. "It belonged to the Duchess of Windsor before my father bought it at auction in 1998. It's flawless. It's perfect. It's the only thing I have left of my mother. But I couldn't say that. If I said that, they would ask how I afford it. Ow. They would ask who my father was. They would dig, and they would find Leonard Collins. And if they found Leonard Collins, I broke my promise. "I'm sorry," I said instead. The words tasted like ash. "I won't wear it to client meetings." "Maybe just don't wear it at all," Victoria said, smoothing her skirt, "unless you're going to a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese later." A few people chuckled. It was nervous laughter, the kind people used to signal to the alpha that they were on her side. "Right," Gregory said, clearly bored. "Moving on, the financials." I pulled my hand under the table. I gripped my left hand with my right, squeezing until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to cry. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to buy the company and fire everyone in this room. But I sat there. I took notes. And I let them laugh. The second the meeting ended, I bolted. I didn't run. Running drew attention. But I walked with a speed that bordered on aerobic. I bypassed my cubicle and went straight to the women's restroom on the east side of the floor. It was the one with the flickering light that nobody liked to use. I pushed through the door and went into the farthest stall. I locked it. My breath was coming in short, jagged gasps. I leaned my forehead against the cool metal of the stall door. "Breathe," I told myself. 1, 2, 3, breathe. I looked at the ring. In the harsh, flickering light of the bathroom, it looked alien. Victoria's words were echoing in my head. Plastic, gumball machine. Embarrassing. It felt like she had spat on my mother's grave. I started to twist the ring off. It was tight. My fingers had swollen from the stress. I tugged at it, panic rising in my chest. If I took it off, maybe the burning feeling would stop. Maybe I could just be normal. "Ashley." The voice came from the main sink area. It was Nicole. I froze. "I'm fine," I choked out. My voice sounded wet, thick. "Open the door, Ash." I hesitated. Nicole was the only person here who treated me like a human being. She was an admin assistant, overworked and underpaid, but she always shared her snacks with me. I unlocked the stall and stepped out. Nicole was leaning against the sink, her arms crossed. She looked angry, but not at me. "She's a witch," Nicole said. She didn't use the word witch, but she mouthed the other one. "Don't listen to her. She's just insecure because her dad is the only reason she has a job." I walked to the sink and turned on the cold water. I splashed my face, trying to cool the heat in my skin. "It doesn't matter. She's right. It looks cheap." "It does not," Nicole said firmly. She grabbed a paper towel and handed it to me. "It's unique. I've always liked it. It looks real." I froze, the paper towel hovering over my wet cheek. "What do you mean, real?" "I don't know," she shrugged. "Like, it has character. Not like that mass-produced stuff she wears. Does it have a story?" I stared at the ring. Does it have a story?" "My dad gave it to me," I said softly, before things changed." "See?" Nicole smiled gently. "That makes it worth more than anything Victoria owns. Don't let her take that away from you." I looked at Nicole's kind face. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say, "My dad is Leonard Collins. He's not dead or in jail or whatever everyone assumes. He's sitting in a mansion in Connecticut right now, afraid of the world, and he made me promise to make it on my own so I wouldn't end up like him." "You're right," I said instead. "Thanks, Nick." "Any time. Now come on. I hid a bagel in my desk drawer before the meeting. We can split it." I forced a smile. "I have to finish the audit first, but save me half?" "Deal." She left. I stayed for another minute staring at the mirror. My father's voice played in my head, a memory from the day I left. "They only love you when they know what you can give them, Ashley. Build a life where you know it's real. Promise me." "I promise," I whispered to the empty bathroom. I dried my face, spun the ring so the diamond was hidden against my palm, and walked back out into the Shark Tank. Noon. The break room was crowded. I was sitting at the small round table near the recycling bins, eating a sandwich I had made at home. Bologna and cheese on white bread. It cost me 62 cents to make. I had calculated it. I was reading a book on my phone, a PDF of advanced market theory, when the shadow fell over me. "Hi, sweetie." I didn't have to look up to know it was Victoria. The smell of Chanel No. 5 arrived 3 seconds before she did. "Hi, Victoria," I said, putting my phone down. She was holding a large, white plastic bag. She dropped it onto the table next to my sandwich. It landed with a heavy thump. "So," she began, loudly enough that the table of marketing guys behind us stopped talking. "I was thinking about what happened this morning, and I felt just terrible." "It's fine," I said quickly. "Really. No, it's not fine. I realize that maybe you just don't have access to better options." She patted the bag. "I was doing a closet purge this weekend. I was going to send this stuff to Goodwill, but then I thought of you." I stared at the bag. My stomach turned over. "Victoria, I don't need—" "Oh, don't be proud," she interrupted, her voice dripping with that sickening sweetness. "It's good stuff. Some of it still has tags on it. It's just, things that didn't fit me right or were a little out of season." She reached into the bag and pulled out a blouse. It was a garish, lime green polyester thing with a stain on the collar. "See?" she said, holding it up against her chest. "This would look so cute on you. It would really brighten up your palette." She wasn't offering me clothes. She was offering me trash. She was publicly designating me as a charity case. This was a power move, pure and simple. By accepting this, I would be acknowledging my lower status. I would be thanking her for her refuse. I looked around the room. People were watching. They were waiting to see if I would take it. If I refused, I looked ungrateful and bitter. If I accepted, I was pathetic. I thought about my bank account. I thought about the $3.7 million in liquid cash I had sitting in a high-yield savings account. I could buy a boutique. I could buy the factory that made this blouse and burn it down. But Ashley the analyst needed charity. Ashley the analyst needed to be pathetic. I reached out and took the blouse. The fabric felt scratchy and cheap. "Thank you, Victoria," I said. "That's very thoughtful of you." "You are so welcome," she beamed, looking around the room to make sure everyone saw her benevolence. "There's a bunch more in there. Just go through it, and seriously, burn that cardigan." She turned and strutted away, leaving me holding the stained green blouse. I sat there for a long moment. I felt like I was covered in slime. I slowly folded the blouse and put it back in the bag. I would throw it in a dumpster on my way home. I would burn it. But for now, I had to smile. By 2 o'clock, the adrenaline from the morning had faded into a dull headache. I was working on the audit for the mid-level accounts. It was grunt work, the kind of stuff they gave to interns and people they didn't trust with the real numbers, checking invoices against ledger entries, mind-numbing. I was scrolling through the expenses for the Archway project, a subsidiary deal Gregory had been overseeing personally. Victoria was technically the project lead, which meant she signed the paperwork and Gregory did the heavy lifting. I matched the line items. Catering, $2,000. Match. Venue rental, $5,000. Match. Consulting fees, $15,000. Match. Then I stopped. Vendor, Zenith Solutions. Amount $42,000. I frowned. I checked the invoice. It was a generic PDF, barely formatted. No itemized list of services, just consulting services. I checked the ledger again. The payment had gone out 3 weeks ago. I pulled up the vendor list for the company. Zenith Solutions wasn't a registered vendor. My heart sped up. This was sloppy. Usually, if they were funneling money, they were smarter about it. I did a quick cross-reference on the company name. Nothing in our internal database. I checked the state business registry. Zenith Solutions, LLC, registered agent V. Ashford. I stared at the screen. Victoria had registered a shell company in her own name and billed her father's company $42,000 for consulting. It was so brazen, so stupid, that I almost laughed. She hadn't even used a fake name. She just assumed nobody would check the low-level audits. I sat back in my chair. This was it. This was the smoking gun. If I took this to compliance, she would be fired, maybe even prosecuted. Embezzlement was a felony. But then I hesitated. If I reported it, I would have to explain how I found it. I would have to explain why I was digging into vendor registrations. They would look at me. They would see a competent, sharp investigator, not the mousy analyst who wore charity clothes. And Gregory protected his own. If I went to HR, the complaint would likely disappear, and I would be fired for snooping or breach of confidentiality. I needed more proof. I needed the original work order. The invoice was digital, but for a check this size to be cut, there had to be a physical requisition form with a signature. Gregory still insisted on paper trails for checks over 10 grand. The digital file said the hard copy was in Storage B. Storage B was the basement archives, the graveyard of documents. I looked at the clock. 2:15. I could pretend to be looking for old tax records. I stood up. I grabbed my empty coffee mug as a prop. "Don't do it, Ashley," a voice in my head warned. "Stay invisible." "No," another voice answered, the voice that sounded like my father. "They are stealing from the investors. They are compromising the integrity of the firm. You can't let that slide." I walked toward the elevator. I wasn't going to turn her in, not yet, but I was going to hold the card. I was going to get the proof. The basement smelled like wet cardboard and time. It was a labyrinth of metal shelving units, stacked floor to ceiling with banker's boxes. The fluorescent lights buzzed aggressively, flickering in a way that made the shadows jump. I found the aisle marked 2023 Q1 Q2. My chest was tight. This wasn't my job. I wasn't a detective. I was supposed to be entering data, not hunting for fraud. I started pulling boxes. They were heavy, filled with reams of paper. Dust motes danced in the light. Box 14, Invoices AM. I hauled it off the shelf. I broke a nail. I didn't care. I ripped the lid off. I started flipping through the files. Acme Corp, Allied Services, Anderson Consulting. Nothing. I moved to the next box. Box 15, Invoices NZ. I searched. Xerox. Yankee Candle. There was no Zenith. My stomach dropped. Had they destroyed it? Was I chasing a ghost? I sat back on the dusty concrete floor, wiping sweat from my forehead. I was exhausted. My hands were covered in gray smudge. Think, Ashley. Think. If Victoria was lazy, and she was, she wouldn't file it correctly. She would shove it somewhere easy. She wouldn't walk all the way to the NZ section. She would put it in the most recent pile, or the to-be-filed stack that the interns never got around to. I looked at the cart near the door. It was overflowing with loose papers waiting to be sorted. I walked over to it. I started digging. Receipts for lunch, parking validations, copier repair logs. And then, near the bottom, stuck to a gum wrapper, I found it. A yellow requisition form. Payee. Zenith Solutions. Amount, $42,000. Purpose, strategic advisory. And there, at the bottom, the signature. It wasn't Gregory's. It was a stamp of Gregory's signature, and next to it, small initials in blue ink, VA. She had stamped her father's approval and initialed it herself. She hadn't even forged it properly. She just assumed she was untouchable. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking. I took a picture of the document. Then I took another one, closer up. Then I took a picture of the file metadata on the back. I folded the yellow paper and shoved it deep into the pocket of my slacks, behind the loose change. I had it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but for the first time in 3 years I had something sharp in my pocket. I checked my watch. I had been down here for 40 minutes. I needed to get back before someone noticed I was gone. I dusted off my pants, fixed my cardigan, and walked toward the elevator. I wasn't just the girl with the cheap shoes anymore. I was the girl with the evidence, and the ring in my pocket felt heavier than ever. The office was dead silent save for the hum of the vending machine down the hall and the rhythmic clicking of my mouse. It was 7:30 at night. The cleaning crew had already vacuumed around my feet, politely ignoring the woman hunched over a spreadsheet in the dark. I had the yellow requisition form, the smoking gun, tucked safely inside the lining of my purse. But right now, I wasn't looking at the fraud. I was looking at the collateral damage. I had opened the master file for the Archway project, the one Victoria claimed to have finalized before she left at 3 o'clock for a spa appointment. It was a bloodbath. "Oh, Victoria," I whispered to the empty room. "You idiot! She hadn't just embezzled $42,000, she had broken the entire projection model. In her attempt to bury the fake consulting fee, she had hard-coded the expense into the capital gains column instead of operating expenses. It was a rookie mistake, a mistake a first-year accounting student wouldn't make. But because she had done it, the tax liability for the entire project was calculating at zero. If Gregory presented this to the board, or worse, to a potential investor, they wouldn't just see a typo. They would see tax fraud. The company would be audited. The stock would tank. And if the company went under before I was ready, my father would see it as a failure of the firm, not a failure of the people running it. I couldn't let them die yet. I needed them alive so I could kill them properly. I stared at the screen. My eyes burned. I wanted to go home. I wanted to order Thai food and watch a documentary. "Just leave it," the angry part of me said. "Let them hang themselves." "No," the strategist in me answered. "If the ship sinks now, you drown with the rats. Keep the ship afloat until you have a lifeboat." I cracked my knuckles and started typing. I couldn't just delete the fake fee. That would raise questions. Instead, I had to balance it. I created a contra-entry in the miscellaneous ledger, offsetting the tax error by redistributing the weight of the $42,000 across 12 different sub-accounts. It was forensic surgery. I was hiding her crime better than she had, just to keep the balance sheet from screaming, "Audit me." I worked line by line. Cell F14, adjusted variance. Cell G92, recalculated amortization. It took 3 hours. My back ached. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since the bologna sandwich at noon. At 10:15, I hit save. I didn't leave a digital footprint. I used a generic admin login that Gregory had shared with the team 6 months ago and never changed. To the system, it would look like an automated system update or perhaps Gregory himself doing late-night work. I sat back, rubbing my temples. The numbers were clean. The fraud was still there, buried deep like a tick under the skin, but the host body wouldn't die from it immediately. I grabbed my purse, feeling the crinkle of the stolen yellow paper inside. "You're welcome," I muttered to the empty executive offices. The email hit my inbox at 9:03 the next morning. I was sitting at my desk, trying to look busy while actually reading a legal brief on my phone about inheritance tax loopholes. The notification popped up on my desktop monitor. From Gregory Ashford. To Senior Team Analysts. Subject: Great work on Archway. I opened it. Team, I just reviewed the final projections for the Archway deal. The tax balancing is masterful. This is exactly the kind of detailed, high-level thinking we need to land the Winthrop account. Excellent work pushing this through. My heart gave a little jump. It was a small victory. Gregory had noticed the quality of the work. He had noticed the logic, the precision. For a second, I felt a flicker of pride. Then the reply came. From Victoria Ashford. To Senior Team Analysts. Subject: Great work on Archway. Thanks, Dad. I was up until midnight tweaking those formulas. I really wanted to make sure the tax liability was bulletproof. So glad it paid off. Coffee is on me today. Figuratively, LOL. I stared at the screen. The world seemed to tilt slightly to the left, tweaking those formulas. She hadn't even opened the file. The last time she logged in was yesterday morning. She didn't even know what I had fixed. She just saw praise and threw herself in front of it like a goalie catching a ball. I felt a physical pressure in my chest, expanding outward. It was rage, hot and sharp. I wanted to hit reply all. I wanted to type, "Actually, Victoria, can you explain why you categorized a consulting fee as a capital gain? Can you explain the amortization schedule you tweaked? Or should I ask Zenith Solutions to explain it?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could do it. I could end her right now. "Don't," my internal voice hissed. "Not yet. You're invisible, remember. Invisible people don't take credit. Invisible people don't start wars." I took a breath. I held it for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I let it out slowly. "Hey, Ash," Nicole whispered, rolling her chair over to my cubicle. She pointed at the screen. "Did you see that? I saw you here last night. I saw your car in the lot when I left at 7. She wasn't here." I looked at Nicole. Her eyes were wide, indignant on my behalf. "It doesn't matter," I said quietly. "It does matter. She's stealing your work." "Again." "Let her have it," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady, though my hands were trembling under the desk. "If she takes credit for the work, she takes responsibility for it too. If there's a mistake, it's on her." "But there isn't a mistake," Nicole said, "because you did it." "Exactly," I said. "It's fine, Nick. Really." I minimized the email. I couldn't look at it anymore. "You're a saint," Nicole grumbled, rolling back to her desk. "Or a masochist. I can't decide." I wasn't a saint. I was a hunter, waiting in the tall grass. But God, the waiting was agony. At 5:30, the sky was a bruised purple color, threatening rain. I walked out to the parking lot, my bag heavy on my shoulder. My car was a 2008 Honda Civic with a dent in the rear bumper and a clear coat that was peeling off like sunburned skin. I had bought it for $2,000 cash from a guy on Craigslist 3 years ago. It rattled when it idled, and the air conditioning smelled like wet dog. It was the perfect car for Ashley the analyst. I slid into the driver's seat. The upholstery was torn on the side, scratching my thigh. I put the key in the ignition and turned it. Click. Nothing. No crank. No sputter, just a dry, mocking click. "No," I groaned, dropping my forehead against the steering wheel. "Not today, please, not today." I tried again. Click, click, click. Battery or starter. Or maybe the car had just given up on life, much like I felt like doing. I sat there for a moment, listening to the wind whistle through the crack in the window seal. I could call AAA. I had the premium membership paid for by the trust. They would send a tow truck in 20 minutes. But Ashley couldn't afford a tow truck. Ashley would have to call her uncle who knew about cars, or wait for a kind stranger. A sleek white shape pulled up alongside me. The window rolled down smoothly. It was a Mercedes G-Wagon. "Victoria." "Oh no," she called out, leaning over the passenger seat. "Is the jalopy dead?" I rolled down my manual window. "I think it's the battery." "Bummer," she said, pouting. It was a practiced pout, one she probably used for Instagram selfies. "You know, honestly, sweetie, maybe it's a sign." "A sign?" I asked, gripping the steering wheel. "That car is a death trap. I get nervous just parking next to it. Maybe the universe is telling you to switch to public transit. It's so much better for the carbon footprint, right?" She smiled. It was that toxic benevolence again. "I'm not insulting your poverty. I'm saving the planet." "Yeah," I said, my voice tight. "Maybe you're right." "Do you need a jump?" she asked, but her foot was already easing off the brake. "Although I don't think I have cables, and I wouldn't want to fry my electrical system. German engineering is so sensitive." "I'll be fine," I said. "I'll take the bus." "Good for you. Getting those steps in." She waved. "See you tomorrow. Don't wear the cardigan." She sped off, her tires kicking up a small spray of gravel that hit my door. Tink. I watched her taillights disappear. I could buy 10 of those G-Wagons right now. I could buy the dealership. I could buy the factory in Graz, Austria, where they were built. But instead, I grabbed my bag, locked my dead car, and started walking toward the bus stop in the rain. The number 42 bus smelled like damp wool and pine sol. I found a seat near the back, wedged between a teenager listening to leaking headphones and an older woman holding a bag of groceries that smelled like onions. The windows were fogged up with condensation. I used my sleeve to wipe a small circle in the glass so I could watch the city blur by. The rain had started in earnest now, streaking the neon lights of the storefronts into long, watery lines. My hand found the ring in my pocket. I hadn't put it back on my finger yet. I just held it, tracing the sharp edges of the emerald-cut diamond with my thumb. The motion triggered the memory, as it always did. London, 1998. I was 8 years old. My father, Leonard, was holding my hand so tight it hurt. We were in the auction house, surrounded by people who spoke in hushed, reverent tones. "This one, Ashley," he had whispered to me. "Look at this one." The auctioneer was describing the lot. The Rose of Provence, a pink diamond of exceptional clarity, set in platinum by Cartier, circa 1924. "Why that one, Daddy?" I had asked. "It's pink." "Because it survived," he told me. His voice was serious, lacking the playful tone he usually used with me. "This ring was smuggled out of France during the war inside a loaf of bread. It crossed the ocean in the heel of a boot. It looks delicate, but it is the hardest substance on earth." He looked at me then, his eyes intense. "Beautiful things are easy to break, Ashley. But the things that last, they have to be hard. They have to be hidden sometimes." He bought it for £2.3 million. He gave it to my mother, and she wore it every day until the accident. When he gave it to me 3 years ago in his study, he repeated those words. "It has to be hidden sometimes." I looked down at the dirty floor of the bus. A discarded soda bottle rolled back and forth with the motion of the vehicle. I was hiding. I was the diamond inside the loaf of bread. But I was tired of being the bread. I was so tired of being the bread. "Next stop, West 4th, the automated voice announced. I shoved the ring deep into my pocket and stood up. My apartment building was a 4-story walk-up that had been trendy in the 70s and had been slowly decaying ever since. The hallway carpet was a suspicious shade of brown, and the light fixture outside my door had been buzzing for 6 months. I trudged up the stairs, my wet shoes squeaking on the linoleum. Mr. Henderson was waiting for me. He was leaning against my doorframe, a short man with a comb-over and a permanent scowl. He was holding a clipboard. "You're late," he said. No hello. "Good evening, Mr. Henderson," I said, shifting my heavy bag to the other shoulder. "Rent isn't due until the 1st. "Not rent, the water assessment fee." He tapped the clipboard with a pen. "I posted the notice on the lobby door 3 days ago, $50 per unit. A pipe burst in the basement." "Mr. Henderson," I said, trying to keep my voice reasonable, "the lease says assessments have to be mailed to tenants with 30 days' notice. You can't just tape a note to the door and demand cash." "I can if it's an emergency," he snapped. "Look, Collins, do you have the 50 or not? Because if you're going to be difficult, I have a waiting list of people who would kill for this studio. I can find a lease violation if I look hard enough." I stared at him. $50. I had spent $50 on a salad and a sparkling water at lunch once, in my old life. The interest on my trust fund earned $50 every 4 minutes. I could write him a check for the building. I could hand him a stack of cash that would make him swallow his gum. But Ashley Collins, the analyst, didn't have $50 to spare. Ashley Collins had budgeted strictly for the month. "I don't have cash on me," I lied. "I can add it to the rent check on Friday." He narrowed his eyes. "Friday, and include a $5 late fee." "That's illegal," I said automatically. "Friday," he repeated, pushing off the doorframe, "or I start showing the unit." He walked past me, smelling of stale cigar smoke. I unlocked my door and stepped inside. My apartment was tiny, 300 square feet. A futon, a small table, a kitchenette. I locked the deadbolt. I leaned back against the door and slid down until I was sitting on the floor. It was absurd. It was a farce. I was fighting with a slumlord over $50 while sitting on a fortune. I pulled the yellow requisition form out of my pocket. I crawled over to my bed, a mattress on a metal frame, and lifted the corner. I slid the paper between the mattress and the box spring, right in the center where nobody would look. "Just a little longer," I whispered. "Just hold on." The next morning, the office was vibrating. You could feel it the moment the elevator doors opened. The air was charged, frantic. People were moving faster than usual. Phones were ringing. I walked to my cubicle, keeping my head down. I had taken the bus again, and my hair was frizzy from the humidity. Nicole intercepted me before I could even put my bag down. "He's coming," she hissed, her eyes wide. She looked terrified. "Who?" I asked, turning on my computer. "Gregory?" "No. The big one. The shark." She leaned in close. "Thomas Winthrop." My stomach dropped through the floor. "What?" I asked. My voice sounded too loud. "Winthrop," she repeated. "He just called Gregory. He's doing a surprise site visit. He's going to be here in an hour." I gripped the edge of my desk. Thomas Winthrop, I knew him. Not as the scary billionaire investor that these people feared, but as Uncle Thomas. He had taught me how to play chess when I was 10. He had been at my graduation. He was the only person in the world besides my father who knew exactly what I looked like. If he saw me, if he saw Ashley Collins sitting in a cubicle wearing a pilling cardigan, he wouldn't just be confused. He would stop the tour. He would say my name. And my cover would be blown. "Oh, God," I said. "I know," Nicole said, misinterpreting my panic. "Everyone is freaking out. Gregory is screaming at the cleaning crew right now." Just then, the door to Gregory's office flew open. "Listen up," Gregory bellowed. His face was a blotchy red, and sweat was already beading on his forehead. "Mr. Winthrop is on his way. I want this place spotless. No personal items on desks. No food, no jackets on chairs." His eyes swept the room, frantic, manic. "Victoria," he shouted, "get the presentation loaded in the main conference room. Make sure the font is blue. He likes blue." "On it, Daddy," Victoria called out. She was applying lipstick in a compact mirror, looking strangely calm amidst the chaos. Gregory turned and looked at me. He stared at my frizzled hair, my cheap clothes, my general aura of poverty. He frowned. "Collins," he barked. I stood up. "Yes, Mr. Ashford. We need the office to look dynamic, high energy, success." He waved a hand at me dismissively. "You're a bit cluttery. Why don't you work from the file room today?" "The file room? The closet?" "The file room?" I asked. "Yes, we need to clear some floor space. Just take your laptop and go in there until he leaves. Keep the door shut. We don't want him seeing the back-end operations." He meant he didn't want Winthrop to see the poor person. He wanted to hide the ugly analyst so the billionaire wouldn't be offended by my lack of designer clothing. "Of course," I said. A wave of relief washed over me so strong it almost made me dizzy. He was hiding me. He was doing my work for me. "I'll go right now," I said. "Good, move it." I grabbed my laptop. I didn't argue. I didn't fight for my dignity. I scurried toward the file room like the rat they thought I was. Perfect, I thought as I closed the heavy door behind me, plunging myself into the semi-darkness of the windowless room. If I'm in the closet, Thomas won't see me. I can survive this. I sat down on a stack of printer paper boxes. I was safe, or so I thought. The file room was actually a converted supply closet that smelled of ozone and damp cardboard. I cleared a space on a stack of boxes labeled Tax Returns 2018 and set up my laptop. My mouse pad was a ream of printer paper. The only light came from the blue glow of a server rack humming in the corner and the thin line of illumination creeping under the door. I sat on a folding chair that wobbled every time I shifted my weight. This is it, I thought, staring at the blank wall. This is the glamorous life of independence my father wanted for me. I could hear them outside. The office sounded different when you were hidden in the walls, the muffled thud of footsteps, the frantic whispers. "Move that plant!" Gregory's voice hissed, sounding closer than I expected. "It looks dead. Why do we have dead plants in the lobby?" "I'm moving it, Daddy," Victoria's voice. "God, you're sweating. Do not shake his hand if you're sweating." I pulled my knees up to my chest, balancing my heels on the rung of the chair. I felt small, physically, spatially small. 3 years of perfect grades at Columbia, an MBA finished in 18 months, an internship at Goldman where I outperformed analysts 10 years my senior, and now I was hiding in a closet next to a mop bucket so a billionaire wouldn't be offended by my outlet mall shoes. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the ring. In the dim blue light of the server rack, the diamond didn't sparkle. It just glowed, dark and heavy. I slipped it onto my finger. It was the only thing in this room that felt like me. "Just stay quiet," I whispered to myself. "Let them play their game. You're just the ghost in the machine." I opened the server drive and pulled up the Winthrop presentation Final VFAR Fort PPTX file. I knew I shouldn't look. It was like slowing down to look at a car crash, but I had to know what they were walking into. I clicked through the slides. Slide 1, Synergy in Motion. Slide 2, Dynamic Growth Vectors. It was all fluff. Buzzwords and stock photos of people shaking hands in front of glass buildings. There was no substance, no hard data on market volatility, no stress tests for the merger. Then I got to the financial projections. I gasped. A literal physical gasp that echoed in the tiny room. Victoria hadn't just used the wrong numbers, she had used the optimistic projections from the pre-recession model. She was projecting a 12% growth rate in a market that was currently contracting by 3%. She's going to get slaughtered, I thought. My heart started racing. Not for her, I hoped she choked on her lies, but for the company. If Thomas Winthrop saw this, he wouldn't just say no. He would laugh. He would tell his friends. The reputation of Pinnacle Group would be incinerated before lunch. I hovered my cursor over the data set. I could fix it. I could jump into the back end, link the spreadsheet to the live market feed, and update the slide in real time. It would take me 5 minutes. I moved the mouse. Then I stopped. No. I pulled my hand back. Let it burn. If I fixed it, Victoria would take the credit. She would beam and say, "Look how accurate my models are," and nothing would change. I sat on my hands to keep them from typing. The urge to correct the error was a physical itch, a compulsion born of a lifetime of perfectionism, but I forced myself to watch the cursor blink. Let him see them, I told myself. Let Thomas see exactly who they are. My phone buzzed on the stack of paper. I picked it up, expecting a text from Nicole updating me on the chaos. It was an email notification. Sender, Holloway and Partners. My breath hitched. Holloway was my father's personal attorney. He was the only conduit I had to the world I had left behind. I swiped the notification open. I didn't read it quickly. I read it word by word, my lips moving silently in the dark. The subject line was simply, "Update." The message was narrative, formal, but urgent. Mr. Holloway wrote that he was reaching out against protocol because my father had been asking for me. He stated that Leonard's health was stable physically, but that his isolation was deepening. He wrote that my father spent most of his days in the library, looking at old photo albums, and that he had mentioned my name 3 times during their last meeting, asking if the experiment was over yet. The experiment, I whispered. That's what this was to him, an experiment, a test of character. I felt a sudden, sharp spike of anger. I wasn't an experiment. I was a person living on tuna fish and anxiety while he sat in a mansion waiting for me to prove I was worthy of his name. But then, the anger faded, replaced by a hollow ache. He missed me. The great Leonard Collins, the man who moved markets with a whisper, was sitting alone in a library missing his daughter. I started to type a reply. Tell him I'm fine. Tell him I'm close. Tell him. I deleted it. Tell him I'm hiding in a closet while his former partner comes to judge us. I deleted that too. I couldn't reply. Any contact before I had made it was an admission of defeat. It was running home to Daddy because the world was too hard. I turned the phone screen off and placed it face down. The darkness in the room seemed to get heavier. The elevator dinged. It wasn't the usual ding. It sounded louder, more final. The noise outside the closet door ceased instantly. The frantic whispers cut off. The shuffling of feet stopped. It was the silence of a predator entering the clearing. I pressed my ear against the cool wood of the door. "Thomas!" Gregory's voice boomed. It was too loud, too jovial, the sound of a man trying to slap a back that didn't want to be slapped. "Welcome to Pinnacle. It's been too long." Gregory. The voice was gravel and old Scotch. Thomas Winthrop. Hearing it made my stomach turn over. It sounded exactly the same as it had 5 years ago at the charity gala, where he'd told me I looked just like my mother. "You've aged," Thomas said. It wasn't an insult, just an observation, a fact. "The market keeps us on our toes." Gregory laughed, a nervous braying sound. Come, let me introduce you to the team. This is my daughter, Victoria. She's our lead strategist." "Mr. Winthrop," Victoria purred. I could practically hear the eyelash batting through the wood. "It is such an honor. I've studied your acquisition of the kinetic model in business school. Truly revolutionary." "Is that so?" Thomas sounded bored. "It was a hostile takeover. Nothing revolutionary about brute force. Shall we?" "Right this way," Gregory said. The footsteps moved past my door. I held my breath. If they opened it, if Gregory decided to show off the archives, I was dead. The heavy footsteps paused right in front of the closet. "Storage?" Thomas asked. Yes, administrative files," Gregory stammered. "Nothing of interest." "I see." There was a pause. A long, agonizing pause where I imagined Thomas staring at the door handle, knowing something was wrong because he had an instinct for hidden things. Then the footsteps moved on. I let out a breath that sounded like a whistle. The main conference room shared a wall with the file room. It wasn't a solid structural wall. It was a partition wall put up during the renovation in the 90s. If I pressed my ear against the drywall between the metal studs, I could hear everything. I pulled my chair over to the wall and leaned in. "As you can see," Victoria's voice filtered through, muffled but audible. "Our growth trajectory is upward. We anticipate a synergy bonus of—" "Stop," Thomas said. The interruption was soft, but it stopped the room dead. "Synergy bonus," Thomas repeated. "That's not a line item. That's a hope. Show me the risk assessment for the third quarter." "Of course," Victoria said. I heard the click of the slide advancer. "Here we have the projected stability index." "I don't want an index," Thomas said. "I want the raw numbers. Your spreadsheet says you're projecting 12% growth. The sector is down 3. Explain the variance." Silence. "Well," Victoria started, her voice pitching up, "we believe that our unique approach to client retention—" "You believe?" Thomas cut in. "Math isn't a belief system, young lady. It's a language, and your numbers aren't speaking English. They're speaking gibberish." I winced. Ouch. "I think what Victoria means," Gregory interjected, sounding desperate, "is that we've factored in the Archway contract." "The Archway contract is a fixed bid," Thomas snapped. "It doesn't account for a 15-point swing against market trends. Who ran this model?" "My team did," Gregory said. "Your team?" Thomas asked. "Or your daughter?" "It was a collaborative effort," Victoria said, her voice trembling now. "We used the standard algorithms." "The standard algorithms for what year? 2010? Thomas sounded angry now, the sound of a chair scraping back. "This is a waste of my time, Gregory. You're showing me cartoons when I asked for blueprints." I closed my eyes. He was going to walk. He was going to leave right now. "Wait," Gregory said. "Wait, Thomas, please. The data is there. We might have just pulled the wrong summary slide." "The wrong slide?" Thomas scoffed. "You're asking for $300 million and you pulled the wrong slide?" There's an analyst," Gregory said. "She managed the back-end data. She knows the raw numbers." My eyes snapped open. "No." "An analyst?" Thomas asked. "You have an analyst who understands this better than your lead strategist?" She's very detail-oriented," Gregory said. "She can explain the variance." "Well," Thomas demanded, "where is she? Is she invisible?" "She's nearby," Gregory said. I heard the conference room door open, then heavy footsteps coming toward the closet. I scrambled back to my chair. I slammed my laptop shut. I grabbed a random file folder and held it to my chest like a shield. The closet door flew open. Light flooded in, blinding me for a second. Gregory stood there. He looked like he was having a cardiac event. His face was gray. His tie was pulled to the side. "Get up!" he hissed. "Mr. Ashford," I said, feigning confusion. "Get up!" he repeated, grabbing my arm. "Bring the laptop. You need to come into the meeting." "But you said to stay hidden," I whispered. "I'm wearing the cardigan." "I don't care if you're wearing a garbage bag," he shouted, then lowered his voice as he glanced down the hall. "He's walking out. You have to explain the numbers. Now." He pulled me out of the chair. My legs felt like jelly. I grabbed my laptop. I looked down at my hand. The ring. I was wearing the ring. I tried to pull it off, but Gregory yanked me forward. "Come on!" I shoved my left hand into the pocket of my cardigan, curling my fingers around the diamond. "Okay," I said. "Okay." I walked out of the closet and into the bright lights of the hallway. Gregory marched me toward the conference room like a prisoner being led to the gallows. Through the glass wall, I could see him. Thomas Winthrop. He was standing at the head of the table looking at his watch. He looked impatient, powerful, and terrifyingly familiar. I took a breath that rattled in my lungs. "Don't look at his face," I told myself. "Look at the screen. Look at the numbers. Be the numbers." Gregory pushed the door open. "Thomas," Gregory said, breathless, This is the analyst I mentioned. She can explain the growth model." Thomas turned slowly. His eyes swept over my cheap shoes, my pilling cardigan, my frizzy hair. He didn't recognize me. "Not yet." "Well?" he said, his voice cold. "I'm listening." I stepped into the room. "This is Ashley," Gregory said, his hand heavy on my shoulder, pushing me forward. "She inputs the data." I stumbled slightly on the carpet. My left hand was still jammed deep into my cardigan pocket, clutching the ring so hard the metal was biting into my palm. Victoria was standing by the screen, holding the clicker. Her eyes widened when she saw me. For a split second, I saw pure panic, the fear that I would expose her fraud, her laziness, her incompetence. But then the mask slammed back into place. "Oh, Ashley," she exclaimed, her voice pitching into that sympathetic, condescending register she used when she wanted to destroy someone politely. "Daddy, did you really drag her out of the file room? She gets so anxious in front of people." She turned to Thomas Winthrop, offering a conspiratorial smile. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Winthrop. Ashley is our back-end support. She's wonderful at data entry, but she gets a little overwhelmed by the big picture. We usually keep her behind the scenes for her own comfort." It was brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. She had just told him 3 things. I was low level, I was mentally fragile, and anything I said that contradicted her was just confusion. Thomas didn't smile back. He looked at me. His eyes were gray, piercing and intelligent. He looked at my pilling cardigan. He looked at my scuffed shoes. He looked at my frizzled hair. "Data entry," Thomas repeated flatly. "Well, Ashley, since your superiors seem unable to explain why their growth model defies the laws of economics, perhaps you can enlighten me." My throat felt like sandpaper. I wanted to run. I wanted to bolt for the door, grab my bag, and disappear into the subway system forever. But then I looked at the screen. I looked at the slide Victoria had up. It was a bar graph showing a straight line up. It was a lie. It was a mathematical insult, and the daughter of Leonard Collins didn't tolerate bad math. "The model on the screen is incorrect," I said. My voice was quiet, shaky. "Excuse me?" Victoria laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Ashley, honey, don't be confused. This is the finalized—" "It's incorrect," I said louder, stepping toward the table. "It's using pre-recession multipliers on a post-recession market. You're projecting growth based on 2018 consumer spending habits. That doesn't exist anymore." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Go on." I walked to the laptop connected to the projector. "May I?" I asked Victoria. She looked at Gregory. Gregory, sweating through his shirt, nodded frantically. "Let her drive, Victoria." Victoria stepped aside, whispering in my ear as she passed, "If you embarrass me, you're dead." I sat down. I pulled my left hand out of my pocket, keeping it curled into a fist, and typed with my right hand. It was awkward, slow. "If you adjust for the current inflation rate," I said, pulling up the raw data sheet I had been working on in the closet, "and you factor in the supply chain volatility index, the growth isn't 12%. I hit enter. The graph on the big screen shifted. The steep blue line collapsed, flattening out to a modest, realistic curve. "It's 4.2%, I said. The room went silent. 4%? Gregory squeaked. "Ashley, that's not what we—" "It's the truth," I said, finally looking at Thomas. "The 12% model assumes a zero-friction market. We don't live in a zero-friction market. We live in a world where shipping costs have tripled and labor is scarce. If you promise 12%, you're lying to your investors. If you promise 4%, you can deliver it." I took a breath. "And you value integrity, don't you, Mr. Winthrop?" It was a gamble. I was quoting his own book back to him, a book he wrote 20 years ago. Thomas stared at me. For a long, agonizing moment, he didn't speak. He just studied my face, looking for something. "Integrity," he said softly. "Yes, I do." He looked at the screen, then back at me. "That," he pointed to my graph, "is the first honest thing I've seen in this building all morning." Gregory let out a breath that sounded like a sob. Victoria looked like she had swallowed a lemon. "Well," Victoria said, forcing a smile, "I'm glad Ashley remembered the secondary model I walked her through last week. Good job remembering the training, sweetie." She reached out to pat my shoulder. I stiffened. "Don't touch me." "Now," Thomas said, leaning forward, "show me the risk assessment for the merger, the real one." I forgot. For 3 years, I had been vigilant. I had been careful. I had hidden my light under a bushel, under a cardigan, under a layer of carefully constructed poverty. But I was in the zone now. I was doing what I was born to do, analyzing complex systems, finding patterns in chaos. "The risk is here," I said, abandoning the mouse to gesture at the screen, "in the liquidity variance." I lifted my left hand to point at the third column. I had forgotten to curl my fingers. The overhead lights in the conference room were halogen, bright and unforgiving. As my hand swept through the air, the light hit the ring. It didn't just sparkle. High-quality diamonds don't just sparkle. They perform. The pink diamond, the Rose of Provence, caught the beam and fractured it. A flash of intense, brilliant, rose-colored fire shot across the room. It danced over the mahogany table, hit the glass pitcher of water, and reflected into Thomas Winthrop's eyes. It was blindingly obvious. It was undeniably real. I saw Thomas flinch. He blinked, dazzled by the sudden flash. Then his gaze dropped. It traveled from the screen, down my arm to my hand, to the ring. I froze. My hand was still in the air, pointing at the liquidity variance. Time stopped. I could hear the hum of the projector fan. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. "Put your hand down," my brain screamed. "Hide it. Hide it now." But I couldn't move. Thomas stood up. He didn't stand up to leave. He stood up slowly, gravitating toward me, his eyes locked on my finger. "Stop," he said. His voice was a whisper, but it silenced the room instantly. Gregory looked terrified. "Mr. Winthrop? Is something wrong? We can adjust the numbers if—" "Quiet," Thomas commanded, not looking at him. He walked around the table. He stood 2 feet from me. He was staring at my hand with an expression of utter bewilderment. "That ring," he said. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. He knows. He knows the ring. He was there when Dad bought it. Victoria saw the look on his face. She saw the shock, and she misread it completely. She thought he was offended. She thought he was looking at a piece of trash that had no place in a boardroom. "Oh, God," Victoria groaned, stepping forward to intervene. "Mr. Winthrop, I am so sorry." She laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. "I've told her," she said, shaking her head at me like a disappointed parent. "I have told her 1,000 times that it's distracting. It's so tacky, isn't it? Wearing costume jewelry to a client meeting?" She looked at Thomas, desperate for him to agree with her, to bond with her over their shared superior taste. "It's just, you know how some people are," she continued, her voice dripping with toxic sympathy. "They need to wear big, flashy things to feel important. It's a coping mechanism for her financial situation." I slowly lowered my hand. I tried to cover the ring with my other hand, but Thomas took a step closer. "Costume jewelry?" Thomas repeated, his eyes never leaving the diamond. "Yes," Victoria said, eager. "From a gumball machine or a thrift store. I actually offered to take her to Macy's to get something appropriate, but she's so attached to that thing." "May I see it?" Thomas asked. He wasn't asking Victoria. He was asking me. I looked up at him. His face was pale. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. "Mr. Winthrop," I whispered, It's just a ring." "Show me," he said. It wasn't a request anymore. It was an order from a man who controlled billions of dollars. I held out my hand. My fingers were trembling so badly the diamond vibrated, sending little sparks of pink light scattering across his suit jacket. He didn't touch me. He leaned in, squinting. He was looking for the setting. He was looking for the platinum claws. He was looking for the specific way the light bent through the pavilion of the stone. "Mr. Winthrop, really," Gregory said, trying to regain control of the meeting. "We don't need to waste time on Ashley's accessories. If you look at slide 4... "Shut up, Gregory," Thomas said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pair of reading glasses. He put them on. He leaned closer. Victoria giggled. "I know, it's comically bad, right? It tries so hard to look real." "Where did you get this?" Thomas asked. His voice was tight, strained. I pulled my hand back, tucking it against my chest. I found it," I lied, "at an estate sale in Jersey." "An estate sale," Thomas repeated. He looked up at me over his glasses. "In Jersey." "Yes." "And how much did you pay for it?" $5, I said. "It was in a box of junk." Victoria snorted. $5? See, I told you, it's glass." Thomas turned slowly to look at Victoria. The look on his face was terrifying. It wasn't anger. It was the cold, clinical dissection of an insect. "You think this is glass?" he asked quietly. "Well, obviously," Victoria scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Look at the size of it. If that were real, it would be worth, I don't know, thousands." "Thousands," Thomas said dryly. "Right." He turned back to me. "Ashley," he said. He didn't say it like a boss talking to an employee. He said it like a question, like he was testing the weight of the name. "Who are you?" "I'm Ashley," I said. "Just Ashley." "No," Thomas said. You're not just Ashley." He pointed a shaking finger at the ring. "That stone is an emerald-cut, fancy, vivid pink diamond. It weighs 4.2 carats. It was cut in Amsterdam in 1924. The room went dead silent. Victoria's mouth fell open. "What?" "It's called the Rose of Provence," Thomas continued, his voice rising. "I know it because I was standing next to the man who bought it at Christie's in London 27 years ago." He looked at me, his eyes searching my face, stripping away the frizz, the bad lighting, the 3 years of hiding. "He bought it for his wife," Thomas said. "He outbid the Sultan of Brunei for it. He said it reminded him of her laugh." My eyes filled with tears. I couldn't stop them. The mention of my mother here, in this sterile room, broke me. "That ring hasn't been seen in public since the funeral," Thomas said, "since Lawrence Collins disappeared." He took a step closer. "Where did you get it?" he demanded. "Did you steal it? Did you find it?" "I didn't steal it," I choked out. "Then how do you have it?" Thomas shouted. "Tell me. How does an analyst making $40,000 a year have the Rose of Provence on her finger?" "He gave it to me," I screamed back. The words echoed off the glass walls. Thomas froze. "He gave it to you?" he whispered. "Yes," I said, crying now. "He gave it to me when I left. He told me to keep it safe. He told me to hide it." Thomas stared at me. He looked at my eyes. He looked at the shape of my chin. He looked at the way I stood, defiant and terrified. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. "Oh my God," he breathed. He reached out and touched my shoulder. "Amber?" I shook my head. "It's Ashley. I go by Ashley now." "Amber," he repeated, ignoring me. "Amber Collins." I heard a gasp behind me. It was Gregory. "Collins?" Gregory whispered. "Lawrence Collins?" Victoria made a sound like a dying animal. "No, that's impossible. She's poor. She takes the bus. She eats bologna." Thomas turned on them. His face was a mask of fury. "She is the daughter of the man who built this industry," he roared. "And you treated her like this?" He gestured at my clothes, at the room, at the general air of disrespect. "She has more money in her jewelry box than this entire firm is worth." Thomas spat at Victoria. He turned back to me, his eyes softening. "Call him," he said. "What?" I sniffed, wiping my nose on my sleeve. "Your father," Thomas said, pulling his phone out of his pocket and handing it to me. "Call him, right now." "I can't," I said. "I promised." "I promised I wouldn't call until I made it." "Made it?" Thomas laughed, a wet, incredulous sound. "Kid, you just saved a $300 million deal with a laptop and a closet. You made it." He pressed the phone into my hand. "Call him." I looked down at the phone in my hand. It was an older model, heavy and utilitarian, just like Thomas. My thumb hovered over the contact list. "Don't do it," the old fear whispered. "You haven't built anything yet. You're still just an analyst in a cardigan." "Do it," the new anger shouted. "Burn it all down." I pressed the call button. The line rang. 1 ring, 2 rings. The sound amplified in the silent conference room. Everyone was watching me. Gregory was wiping sweat from his upper lip with a handkerchief that looked gray with use. Victoria was staring at the wall, her face a mask of frozen denial. Click. "Thomas?" The voice was rougher than I remembered, deeper. It sounded like old books and pipe tobacco. It sounded like home. My throat closed up. I tried to speak, but only a squeak came out. "Thomas, are you there?" my father asked. "Did you see the girl? Is she all right?" I closed my eyes. He had known. He had sent Thomas here to check on me. All this time I thought I was alone, and he had been watching from the shadows. "Hi, Dad," I whispered. There was a silence on the other end, a silence so profound I could hear the static on the line. "Ashley?" His voice cracked. It broke into 1,000 pieces. "Is that Is that my Amber?" "It's me," I said, tears spilling over my cheeks. "It's me." "Oh, thank God," he breathed. I didn't know if you'd ever call. You're so stubborn. You're just like your mother." I laughed, a wet, choking sound. "I am." "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice sharpening with sudden worry. "Thomas said you were working at a firm. Are they treating you well?" I looked up. I looked at Gregory, who was now trembling visibly. I looked at Victoria, who was picking at a loose thread on her $3,000 suit. "No, Dad," I said clearly. "They aren't." Thomas reached out and gently took the phone from my hand. He put it on speaker and set it on the mahogany table. "Leonard," Thomas said, his voice hard as granite, "you need to hear this." "Thomas!" My father's voice boomed through the room. "What's going on?" "Your daughter," Thomas said, looking directly at Victoria, "has been working out of a supply closet. She's been wearing clothes her colleagues were going to throw in the trash because they told her she looked like a charity case." "What?" My father's voice dropped an octave. It was the tone he used right before he fired a board of directors. "And the ring," Thomas continued, leaning over the table. "The Rose of Provence. They told her it looked like a prize from a gumball machine. They laughed at her, Leonard. In front of the entire staff. They laughed?" The anger in my father's voice was palpable. It wasn't loud. It was cold. It was the sound of a glacier calving. "Who?" my father asked. "Who is responsible for this?" Gregory made a noise like a whimpering dog. "Mr. Collins, please. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. We didn't know—" "You didn't know she was rich?" Thomas cut him off. "That's your defense? That you only treat people with dignity if you think they have a trust fund?" "No, I mean," Gregory stammered, "we treat all our employees with—" "Liar," I said. The word hung in the air. I hadn't planned to say it. It just fell out. "You hid me in a closet," I said, my voice gaining strength. "You told me to stay invisible because I didn't fit the aesthetic. You let your daughter steal my work for 3 years because it was easier than confronting her." "Is this true?" my father demanded. "Yes," Thomas said. "I saw the closet myself." "Burn them," my father said. It wasn't a metaphor. In the world of high finance, it meant destroy their credit, pull their funding, blacklist them from every exchange from New York to Tokyo. "Consider it done," Thomas said. Thomas picked up the phone and took it off speaker. "I'll call you back in 10 minutes, Leonard. I'm bringing her home." He hung up. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Victoria finally moved. She turned to me, her eyes wide and manic. "I was trying to help you," she said. Her voice was high, shrill. "I gave you those clothes because I felt sorry for you. I was being nice." "Nice?" I asked, looking at her. Really looking at her. She looked small. Without her cruelty, without her power, she was just an insecure woman in an expensive suit. "You called my mother's ring a piece of plastic," I said. "You told me I belonged in a discount bin." "I was joking," she cried, looking at Thomas for support. "It was just office banter." "Everyone does it!" Thomas walked over to her. He loomed over her, a giant of industry staring down a petty tyrant. "That ring," Thomas said, pointing to my hand, "is insured for $3.2 million. The provenance dates back to the French Revolution. It is a piece of history." Victoria flinched. "And you," Thomas continued, his voice dripping with disdain, "treated the woman wearing it like she was something you scraped off your shoe. Do you know what that says about your judgment? It says you're blind. It says you can't recognize value when it's staring you in the face. I can fix this," Victoria stammered. "Ashley, tell him. We're friends. We have lunch together." "We don't have lunch together," I said. "You talk at me while I eat a sandwich I made for 60 cents, and you sit there and tell me how lucky I am that you deign to speak to me." I took a step closer to her. I'm not lucky, Victoria. I'm patient. And I'm done waiting. Do you know who Leonard Collins is? Thomas asked the room at large. The other executives, the silent partners who had been watching this train wreck, nodded slowly. They knew. Everyone in finance knew the ghost of Wall Street. He owns 40% of the logistics infrastructure in this country, Thomas said. He is the silent partner in 3 of the 5 biggest tech firms in the valley. And Ashley... He put a hand on my shoulder. Ashley is his only heir. He let that sink in. She could buy this building, Thomas said casually. She could buy this block. She could buy this entire firm with the interest her trust earned while we've been standing in this room. Gregory sank into a chair. He looked like he was going to be sick. We lost the Winthrop contract, Gregory whispered. You lost a lot more than that, Thomas said. You lost the Collins backing. You lost my backing. And I'm going to make sure every partner in the city knows exactly why. He looked at Victoria. You wanted to be an influencer, didn't you? You wanted to be a star? Victoria nodded dumbly. Well, congratulations, Thomas said. You're about to be very famous, as the woman who bullied a billionaire's daughter out of the building. Mr. Winthrop? Gregory tried one last time, standing up on shaky legs. Please, I have a mortgage. The firm is my life. Then you should have run it better, Thomas said coldly. I can fire her. Gregory pointed at Victoria. I'll fire Victoria. She's the problem. I didn't know she was doing the fraud. I swear. Victoria gasped. Daddy? She cooked the books, Gregory shouted, throwing his own daughter under the bus to save his skin. She messed up the tax liability. Ashley fixed it. Ashley is the genius. Victoria she's useless. I watched them turn on each other. It was pathetic. It was inevitable. Rats on a sinking ship always eat each other first. It doesn't matter, Thomas said. You signed the checks, Gregory. You allowed the culture. You put the analyst in the closet. He turned to me. Ready to go? 1 second, I said. I walked over to the table where my laptop was still plugged in. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a flash drive. What are you doing? Victoria asked, tears streaming down her face. I'm taking my work, I said. The models, the projections, the fixes. I plugged the drive in and dragged the files over. You can't do that, Gregory shouted. That's company property. Sue me, I said. I pulled the drive out. Actually, Thomas said, smiling, please sue her. My legal team needs the exercise. I walked to the door. Nicole was standing there holding a box of tissues. She looked stunned, terrified, and thrilled all at once. Nick, I said, stopping in front of her. You're a Collins, she whispered. Yeah, I said, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. You're rich, she said, shaking her head, like scary rich. Does it change anything? I asked. She looked at my face. She looked at the pilling cardigan. She looked at the ring. No, she said. You still owe me half a bagel. I laughed. It was the first real laugh I'd had in years. I'm going to start my own firm, I told her. I'm going to need an operations manager, someone who knows where the bodies are buried. Nicole's eyes lit up. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a career, I said. Double your salary, full benefits, and no toxic benevolence. I'm in, she said instantly. I quit. She threw the box of tissues on the floor. Let's go, Thomas said. We walked out. We walked past the cubicles where I had spent 3 years shrinking. We walked past the break room where I had eaten bologna sandwiches. We walked past the vending machine that stole my quarters. I held my head up. My hand was out of my pocket. The Rose of Provence caught the lobby lights, throwing pink fire across the walls. Frank, the security guard, looked up from his phone. Have a good night, Ashley. It's Amber, I said, not breaking stride. It's Amber. The doors slid open. The city air hit my face. It smelled like exhaust and rain and freedom. A black limousine was waiting at the curb. Thomas held the door open for me. I climbed in. I didn't look back at the building. I didn't look back at the life I had built out of fear. I looked forward. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Home," I said. "Take me to my father." From Amber Collins, CEO, Collins Winthrop Ventures. To Dad, Thomas Winthrop. Subject Q1 report and a little news. The new office is finally open. We took the top 3 floors of the Skyline Tower. Yes, the one directly across the street from the old Pinnacle building. I admit the view is spiteful, but it keeps me motivated. Nicole is killing it as COO. She fired the entire HR department on day 1 and hired a team that actually listens to complaints. She also installed a vending machine that dispenses free espresso, which I feel is a personal victory for both of us. As for the old guard, Gregory filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy last week. Turns out, once the rumors of the audit hit, every client he had jumped ship. He's currently facing an SEC investigation regarding the Zenith Solutions shell company. I almost feel bad for him. Almost. Victoria is, well, she's working. I saw her yesterday. She's a hostess at that fusion restaurant on 5th. I went in for lunch with a client. She had to show me to my table. She tried to say hello, to do that fake, we're old friends routine. I just looked at her, tapped my ring on the table, and ordered the most expensive bottle of wine on the menu. She didn't make eye contact again. I'm coming up to the estate this weekend. I want to look at Mom's old journals again. I think I'm finally ready to read them without crying. We did it, Dad. We really did it. Love, Amber. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.